I never thought I'd see my daughter like this. Sophia was sitting alone in the food court, counting change for a small coffee. Her sneakers were worn and the faded uniform she wore barely fit. The name tag on her chest hung loosely, reminding me of who she used to be. Sophia, my bright, confident daughter who once wore designer clothes, drove the newest car and had big plans for her life. Now there she was, looking nothing like the woman I knew. She looked tired, thinner, her eyes sunken from lack of sleep. I almost didn't recognize her. "Sweetheart," I said, my voice soft, "what are you doing here? Where's Emma?" Sophia didn't meet my gaze. "Emma's with Richard and his mom. They're taking her to the park." It didn't sit right with me. It was Wednesday, her day off from the hospital. Why wasn't she with her daughter? I sat down across from her. "Where's your car?" "The Highlander I helped you get." Her smile faltered. "Richard needed it for work. His truck broke down last month." "For a month." Something in my gut turned cold. "What have you been driving?" She shrugged, trying to sound casual. "The bus. Mom. Saves on gas money." She laughed, but it didn't sound real. I studied her. The weight she'd lost. Her uniform hanging too loosely. Her phone in her hand like she was waiting for a call. Waiting for something. I reached across the table and gently took her hand. It was cold despite the warm California afternoon. "Tell me what's happening, Sophia." Her hand pulled away quickly. "Nothing's happening. Everything's fine," she said, but her voice wavered. "I need to go soon. Richard said he'd call when they're done." I wasn't buying it. Not for a second. "Why didn't you go with them to the park?" "I had errands to run." She stood abruptly. "I should go. I need to catch the 3:15 bus." I stood too. "I'll drive you home." "No, Mom. I'm fine." "The bus is fine," she said quickly, her voice sharp then softened. "Really? I'm fine." I watched her standing in the middle of the food court, a sea of families and chatter surrounding us. My heart broke for her. Something was very wrong. "Sophia, where do you live now?" She blinked, clearly caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "Same place. The house on Maple Street." The house. The charming two-story home they bought 3 years ago. The one I'd visited dozens of times. But something in her face told me there was more to the story. "Have you had lunch?" I asked, hoping to ease into it. "I'm not hungry." "Sophia Marie," I said, using the voice I'd used when she was little. "Sit down. Let me buy you lunch." She hesitated, then slowly sank back into her chair. I went to the counter and ordered Chinese food, something she always liked. When I returned, I set the tray in front of her. She was staring at her phone again, not looking at me. "Richard's checking up on you, isn't he?" I asked, my voice quiet. She didn't respond, instead picking up her chopsticks and eating fast, like someone who hadn't eaten in days. It wasn't like her. I took a deep breath. "Sophia, talk to me." Her hand froze mid-bite. She set the chopsticks down and finally met my gaze. "There's nothing to talk about," she said softly. I reached for her hand again. "Your father and I didn't raise a liar." Her eyes filled with tears. She looked down at her lap, struggling to find the words. "Mom, I can't tell you. If I do, it'll make everything worse. Please, just let it go." I knew that wasn't going to happen. But I couldn't force her to open up right now. Not until she was ready. It wasn't until the next time I saw her that she finally spoke. I was sitting at home when I got a text from Sophia. She said she needed to talk, and for once, the tone of her message didn't sound like the usual, "I'm fine," that she always hid behind. It was different. Urgent. I drove over to her place, my mind racing. When I arrived, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red from crying. There was a mess of papers scattered in front of her, but none of it made any sense. "Mom, I'm in trouble," she said, her voice cracking. I pulled out a chair and sat down across from her. "Tell me everything." She hesitated. Then, as if the weight of everything was too much to keep inside any longer, she finally spoke. "I don't know where to start," she said. "I thought I was helping. I thought I was doing what was best. But now it feels like everything's falling apart and I don't know how to fix it." I took a deep breath, fighting back the urge to interrupt. "Start at the beginning." Sophia wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. "Richard lost his job 6 months ago, or that's what he told me. But I'm not sure anymore. Diane, her mother-in-law, she's been telling me what to do, how to live. It's like they're controlling everything. They convinced me we should move in with them to save money, but once we did, everything changed. They locked up the house. Told me it was only in Richard's name even though I've been paying the mortgage. They rented it out. And I don't know where that money's going. I felt my chest tighten. You're telling me they're taking your house? She nodded. They took everything. My car, my credit cards. Richard said he needed the car for job interviews, but that was months ago. And Diane, she's controlling my money. She gives me $20 a week for expenses. That's it. Everything I earn goes to them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Did you go to the police? Sophia looked down, ashamed. I did. I went to the police 3 weeks ago. I told them everything. But they said it was a civil matter. They said I signed papers giving Richard access to everything. They told me I needed a lawyer. And Mom, I can't afford a lawyer. I can't even afford bus fare most of the time. Her words were like a punch to the gut. What about Emma? How is she being affected by all of this? Sophia's face crumpled. She's being pulled away from me. Diane tells her that I don't love her because I'm not living with them. And now she's being told that I'm not a good mother because I work too much. Diane said if I try to leave, if I try to get help, she'll take Emma and I'll never see her again. My heart broke. Sophia, why didn't you come to me sooner? You don't have to go through this alone. She wiped her eyes and took a deep breath. Because I didn't want to make things worse. And I thought maybe Richard would come to his senses. But he hasn't. No. I'm scared, Mom. I'm scared I'll lose Emma. She's all I have left. I took her hand. You're not going to lose her. Not if I have anything to say about it. Sophia looked at me, her eyes wide. What can you do? I'm going to fix this, sweetheart. I'm going to help you. That night, after leaving Sophia's house, my mind raced with everything she'd told me. I knew she was scared, desperate even. She was trapped, and Richard and Diane were tightening their grip on her life. But I had spent 33 years as a real estate attorney. I knew how to fight back. I knew how to expose fraud, how to unearth lies, and how to prove what was really happening. Sophia thought she had no options. But I was about to show her just how many there were. The next morning I made a few phone calls. The first call was to Margaret Chin. She had worked as my paralegal for 15 years before I retired. She was now at one of the best family law firms in Los Angeles, and I knew she could help me. Margaret, I said when she answered, I need a favor. I need you to look into property records for a house on Maple Street. It's under both Sophia and Richard's names. And I need you to pull everything related to their mortgage. Got it, Margaret replied. I'll get on it right away. The second call was to James Rodriguez. He was a former colleague of mine who had left law behind to become a private investigator. James was brilliant, and he had done a lot of surveillance work for me in the past. James, I said, I need you to do some surveillance work. It's about Richard and Diane. I need evidence of financial fraud, coercion, and potential forgery. I also need photographic evidence of Sophia's living conditions. Can you do it? Of course, Helen. I'll start tomorrow morning. The third call was to the bank where Sophia had originally held her account before Richard took control. I spoke to a representative and was able to arrange for me to access Sophia's account records, once she gave her written permission. These records would show exactly where her money had been going, and it would provide the proof I needed. By the time I hung up the phone, I had a plan. The pieces were falling into place, and I wasn't going to stop until I had all the evidence I needed. That afternoon, I drove by the house on Maple Street, the place where Sophia and Richard had started their lives. It had always been a home full of memories. Emma's first birthday party, Christmas mornings with laughter echoing through the rooms. But now there was a for rent sign out front. The house was empty, rented out without Sophia's consent. I parked across the street and snapped photos. There was no way Richard or Diane could deny what they'd done. I had the proof. Next, I drove to Diane's house. The big one in the expensive neighborhood that she was always so proud of. As I parked down the street and waited, my mind raced. I watched Richard pull up in the Highlander, the car that used to belong to Sophia. He went inside like he owned the place, and I made sure to get photos of him. I wasn't going to miss a thing. At 8:15 p.m. the garage door opened, and there it was. Sophia's living situation. Cement floor. An old space heater. An air mattress in the corner. It was hard to imagine that this was the woman who had put herself through nursing school, who had once been so full of life. Now she was living in a garage, isolated and controlled. I took more photos. Video. The next morning I met with Margaret at the family law firm. She had already started pulling the property records, and by the time we were finished we had everything we needed. The house on Maple Street was indeed in both Sophia and Richard's names, and the mortgage had been paid off as a wedding gift from Sophia's parents. Richard had rented the house out for $3,800 a month, and the money was going into an account solely in his name. Legal. That was marital property. Sophia was entitled to half of that rent. Meanwhile, James sent me footage of Diane going through Sophia's things in the garage, finding the $40 Sophia had hidden and accusing her of stealing from the family. It was all there, proof of financial abuse, emotional manipulation and coercion. James had also captured audio of Diane telling Emma that her mother didn't love her anymore because she was living in the garage. Parental alienation. More illegal acts. The bank records confirmed it. Richard had forged Sophia's signature on several documents, including the one that removed her from their joint account. There were forged signatures on the rental agreement for the house too. Everything was falling into place. I met with Catherine Park, a brilliant family lawyer. She reviewed everything I had, and when she finished she smiled. "This is one of the clearest cases of financial abuse and coercion I've seen in years," she said. "Your daughter has grounds for emergency custody, the return of all marital assets and a restraining order. Possibly criminal charges too." I felt a sense of relief wash over me. We were going to fix this. We were going to get Sophia her life back. "I can file tomorrow and have a hearing within the week," Catherine said. "Do it," I replied. The day of the hearing finally arrived, and I could feel the tension in the air as I picked up Sophia. Her face was pale and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. I had been trying to reassure her, but I knew how hard it was for her to believe that things could actually change. We drove to the courthouse in silence, the weight of everything hanging between us. I could see the hope flickering in her eyes, but she was still afraid of what Richard and Diane might do next. When we arrived, the sun was just starting to rise over the city. It was a beautiful morning, but the heaviness of the situation made it feel like the world was holding its breath. Inside the courthouse, we were greeted by Catherine, who had already prepared everything. She led us into a conference room where we met Richard and Diane, along with their lawyer. Richard looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting around the room. Diane, on the other hand, looked furious, like she was ready for a fight. "What is this?" Diane demanded, glaring at me. "You can't afford a lawyer, Sophia. What's going on here?" Catherine didn't miss a beat. "Actually, Mrs. Reynolds," she said smoothly, "I'm representing Sophia pro bono. Her mother hired me, and we're here to address some very serious concerns about your treatment of my client." Diane opened her mouth to speak, but I could see the lawyer's expression change when he saw the folder Catherine was holding. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "What's in that?" he asked cautiously. Catherine didn't hesitate. "Evidence. Lots of it. Would you like to see it before we go before the judge? It might save your client some embarrassment." I could feel my pulse quicken as Catherine opened the folder. She laid out the photos, the videos, the bank records, and the forged signatures. Every piece of evidence was meticulously organized, and I could see the color draining from Richard and Diane's faces as they began to realize just how deep their betrayal ran. The lawyer flipped through the evidence, his hands trembling. "What is this?" he asked. "Is this forgery?" Catherine interrupted. "Financial abuse. Parental alienation. Unlawful rental of marital property. Emotional abuse. It's all here." Richard's face went white. "We didn't. You took everything from her," I said, my voice cold. "Her house. Her car. Her money. You isolated her, controlled her, and when she tried to get help, you threatened to take Emma away." The room fell silent. Diane looked like she was about to explode, but she couldn't say anything. The lawyer glanced at them, then back at the evidence. He seemed to realize there was no way to defend them. "We'll settle," he said quietly, looking defeated. It took hours to negotiate, but by the end of it we had everything Sophia deserved. Sophia got full custody of Emma, effective immediately. She got the house on Maple Street back, plus all the rental income Richard had collected over the past several months. That amounted to over $22,000. Sophia also got her car back and access to all her bank accounts, along with reimbursement for the money Richard had taken. As for Richard, he'd get supervised visitation with Emma twice a month, but only after completing parenting classes and therapy. Diane, on the other hand, received nothing. No visitation rights. No contact with Emma. No contact with Sophia. And if they violated any terms of the settlement, Catherine would file criminal charges. We walked out of that courthouse victorious. It was over. But the hardest part was yet to come. The weight of the settlement lifted from my shoulders, but there was still so much left to do. I took a deep breath as we stepped out of the courthouse and into the bright California sunshine. Sophia was walking beside me, her face pale, but there was a spark in her eyes, something I hadn't seen in months. The fight was over and she was finally going to get her life back. "You did it," I said, squeezing her hand. "I can't believe it," she whispered. "After everything, it's over. They can't control me anymore." I could see the relief flooding her face. She had been through so much more than any mother or daughter should ever have to face. But now she was free. "Let's go get Emma," I said, a grin pulling at the corners of my lips. "We're bringing her home." As we drove to Diane's house, I could feel the anticipation building. The sun was starting to set, casting a golden light across the city. We pulled up to the house, and there, waiting for us, was the police escort that had been arranged to make sure everything went smoothly. When we got to the front door, Diane was there, standing in the doorway, her face twisted in disbelief. "You can't do this," she spat. "Emma needs stability. She needs to be with her family." I stepped forward, my voice steady. "She needs her mother. And she's coming home with us." Diane stepped back as we walked past her, the police officers following us inside. It didn't take long to gather Emma's things. The room where Sophia had once hoped to raise her daughter was now just a hollow memory, and I knew in that moment that everything was about to change. When I found Emma, she was sitting on the couch, her big brown eyes wide with confusion. But when she saw Sophia, her face lit up and she ran toward her, throwing her little arms around her mother's waist. "Mommy, are you taking me home?" Emma asked, her voice small and innocent. "Yes, baby," Sophia said, tears welling up in her eyes. "We're going home. Just you and me and Gamma." I watched as Sophia knelt down to hug her daughter, holding her tight. My heart swelled with pride for the woman she had become. Despite everything she'd been through, she was still the same loving, strong mother who would do anything to protect her child. As we packed up their things, I could see Richard standing outside in the driveway, looking lost. He was trying to say something, but I didn't have the energy to listen. He'd made his choices and now he had to live with them. "Sophia," Richard said, his voice shaky. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Mom said it was the best thing for everyone." Sophia didn't respond. She buckled Emma into the car seat and closed the door softly. "You chose your mother over me," she said quietly. "You let her treat me like garbage. You stole from me. And you let Emma think I didn't love her. We're done." I got into the car beside her and we drove away, leaving Richard standing there watching us go. The drive back to the house on Maple Street felt like a new beginning. The sun had almost set, casting a warm glow over the neighborhood, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was peace. We pulled up to the house I had helped Sophia buy with so much hope and excitement years ago. It was now a place of refuge, a place to rebuild. Sophia hadn't been inside in months. Diane had made sure of that, keeping her locked out of the life she'd worked so hard to build. But now it was all about to change. Emma bounced excitedly in the back seat, looking out the window. "Mommy, is this our house? Are we staying here?" Sophia turned around with a soft smile, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Yes, baby. We're staying here. Forever." The house looked the same, charming, cozy, full of memories, but there was a new sense of hope in the air. As we walked through the door, Emma's laughter echoed in the hallway. She ran straight for her room, where the princess wallpaper still adorned the walls, where her toy box sat waiting for her. It was the room she should have always had. The room she was always meant to have. I watched Sophia stand in the doorway, taking it all in. The weight of what she had endured was still heavy on her shoulders, but now there was a glimmer of something brighter. I stepped up beside her. "You did it, Sophia. You got your life back." She looked at me, her face softening. "We did it, Mom. I couldn't have done this without you." I wrapped my arm around her. "You're stronger than you know." That night, after Emma had fallen asleep in her new bedroom, Sophia and I sat at the kitchen table drinking tea. It felt like old times, but there was something different about this moment. Something that told me everything was going to be okay. "I can't believe it's finally over," she said, her voice shaky but relieved. "I keep waiting for them to show up, for this to all be a dream." "It's not a dream," I said, my voice firm. "It's real. You're free now. You have everything you need right here." Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at me. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you for believing me. For fighting for me." I squeezed her hand. "That's what mothers do, sweetheart. We fight for our children. Always." And I knew in that moment that this was just the beginning of a new chapter for both of us. 6 months later, I watched Emma blow out the candles on her 5th birthday cake in the backyard of the house on Maple Street. The oak tree out front was full of leaves, casting soft shadows on the grass. We had hung a swing from one of its branches, and Emma's laughter filled the air as she swung back and forth, a big smile plastered across her face. It was a day of celebration, but also a day of healing. After everything Sophia had been through, seeing Emma so happy, so carefree, was a reminder of how far they had come. Sophia had changed too. The dark circles under her eyes were gone, and she had put the weight back on that she'd lost. The sadness that had once consumed her was replaced with the joy of being with her daughter. Finally, completely, without fear of what might happen next. She had even been promoted at work and started therapy to work through everything that had happened. I could see the old spark in her again. I smiled to myself as I watched her laugh with Emma, her arms wrapped around her daughter, her eyes filled with pride. The woman sitting there now was stronger, more confident. She had learned how to stand up for herself, how to fight for the life she deserved. I took a deep breath and walked over to Sophia, who was standing by the swing watching Emma play. She looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, there was peace in her eyes. "Mom," she said softly, "do you ever think about the things we've been through? I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago." I nodded, my heart swelling with pride. "I do. But look at you now. Look at Emma. You've rebuilt your life, Sophia. You've created something beautiful here. You fought for your daughter and you won." Sophia smiled, her hand resting on the swing. "You taught me how to fight. How to never give up. Even when it felt impossible, you reminded me that I wasn't alone." I wrapped my arm around her. "I'll always be here, sweetheart. And so will Emma. Family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up when it counts, about being there for each other, even when it's hard." As the birthday party wound down, I couldn't help but think about everything that had happened. Diane had tried to contact Sophia twice, both times through lawyers demanding grandmother's rights. But every time, Catherine had shut it down with a single letter referencing the evidence we still had. We hadn't heard from her in months. Richard was trying to. He'd completed parenting classes and had been seeing Emma twice a month under supervised visitation. There was hope that one day he might become a better father. But that was up to him. What mattered now was the life Sophia had built for herself and Emma. And I knew that, no matter what, they would always have each other. Sophia turned to me with a small smile. "What did you wish for when you were 5? I laughed softly. "Probably a pony," I said. "What did you wish for at 5? Sophia shrugged. "I don't remember. But I know what I'd wish for now." "What's that?" I asked. She looked over at Emma, laughing with her friends, wearing a princess crown that was slightly crooked. "Nothing," she said quietly. "I don't need to wish for anything. I have everything I need right here." I smiled, putting my arm around her. "Yeah, me too." The sun was setting, casting golden light over the yard. Emma was running around with her friends, laughing as they played tag under the oak tree. I watched them for a while, feeling the warmth of the moment. As I looked at Sophia, I realized how much she had grown. She had fought for everything she had, for her daughter's future, for the life they both deserved. And now, watching Emma play, I knew that the nightmare they had lived through was finally behind them. They had a future full of love and possibility, and that was all that mattered. It was a perfect evening, the kind you don't expect after everything that's happened. The warm, golden glow of the setting sun. The sound of Emma's laughter still ringing in the air as she ran around the yard with her friends. The house on Maple Street, our house now, stood proudly in the background. A symbol of resilience, of everything we had fought for. Sophia and I sat on the back porch watching the kids play. For the first time in what felt like forever, everything seemed right. And even though the scars of the past were still there, fading with time, They weren't the ones defining our future anymore. Sophia, I began, my voice soft but full of pride, look at what you've done. You built this. You gave Emma a home, a future. And you fought like hell to protect her. She turned to me, her eyes glistening with tears that were no longer from fear or pain, but from gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You were the strength I didn't know I had. You believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. I squeezed her hand, feeling the weight of her words. It was true. We had been through hell and back together. But now we were finally standing in the light together, stronger than ever. Emma ran over to us, her cheeks rosy from running around, her hair a little wild. She climbed up into Sophia's lap, and Sophia wrapped her arms around her, holding her close. Mommy, Gamma, Emma said with a grin, can we have pizza for dinner? Sophia laughed, her voice light and carefree for the first time in months. Of course, sweetie. We can have whatever you want. The three of us sat there together, surrounded by the peaceful evening, the sound of the kids' voices drifting in the distance. The worries of the past were behind us. And though the journey had been long and painful, it had brought us here. Home. I looked at Sophia and then at Emma and thought about everything we had been through. The betrayal. The lies. The control. The fear. But those things no longer had power over us. We had fought back and now we were finally free. Mom, Sophia said quietly, breaking my thoughts, what do you think Richard's going to do now? I looked out at the yard, the fading light painting everything with a sense of calm. I think Richard has some work to do. He's going to have to rebuild too. But that's his journey now. We have ours. Sophia nodded, but her face softened with something like forgiveness. I don't think I'll ever fully understand why he let Diane control everything, but I'm not going to let that ruin my life anymore. I can't. I've got Emma. I've got you. And that's enough. And you'll always have us, I said, my heart full. Always. The night fell around us and we sat there in the fading light, the warmth of the house and our family surrounding us. Emma, with her little fingers curled tightly around Sophia's hand, her eyes full of joy, laughter still echoing in the distance. This was what family was all about, showing up for each other, fighting for each other, and never giving up. Richard and Diane had tried to tear us apart, but we had stood strong. We had rebuilt our lives one day at a time. And now with the house on Maple Street we were home. Truly home. I looked at my daughter and granddaughter, their faces filled with love and promise. And I knew in that moment we were going to be okay. Together.